Mining Weekly Online is interviewing Robinson Ramaite, who's involved in the coal and manganese mining area in South Africa. Robinson, thanks very much for talking to Mining Weekly Online. We hear a lot about the crisis in the mining sector at the moment. But out of a crisis can come opportunities.
From a junior miner's perspective, what this crisis comes with is a lot of opportunities. Certain assets that would have otherwise not been available are now available, mainly from foreigners or foreign-held institutions, mainly arising from the listing boom in Australia, Canada, and on the London's AIM market. And what has happened is, together with the global recession and the combination of the crisis in the South African mining sector, a lot of those foreign entities are releasing mainly most of the South African assets. So we are seeing a lot of opportunities in mergers and acquisition space, particularly in the coal sector.
What about the funding element?
The one reason why in the first place a lot of these assets ended up in Australia, Canada and AIM is because the South African funding environment is not very good for funding of exploration projects. Because understand, the most riskiest part in funding of mining is exploration, because it's a piece of ground and somebody is asking money to go and drill. They may find nothing. So it's very risky capital. So what had happened is that you had, during the good times, the economic booms of the 2008 and so on, you had people taking these assets to the Australian market, to AIM, to Canada, and saying, look, we want to explore. Now that market understood the funding of exploration. But what then happened is that a lot of these companies sat on these assets, and not much work was done. In some work, some limited drilling was done, some exploration was done. But in most instances, not much was done. And now you kind of had two issues. One, you had, of course, the economic recession, and now the perceived, from an international perspective, the perceived crisis in South African mining. And I say perceived because when we talk to our international friends, you would assume that it's like, the South African world is falling apart, when we know it is not necessarily that. So there was a lot of pressure on these companies to do something with these assets. Similarly, we also see South African majors wanting to de-risk. We as players who are exclusively focused locally are very excited about that prospect, because suddenly we're seeing a lot of deal flow in that particular space. Your development funding institutions like your IDCs playing a very active role in supporting particularly black junior miners.
Do you see these opportunities mainly in coal?
I'm very focused on the coal space right now, and that's where we're seeing a lot of these opportunities, and mainly because in coal, as we all know, Eskom has been very clear from a policy point of view. They want to see more black miners participating in the Eskom space, and so there's a much bigger opportunity. Plus, Eskom is a very good client, so they pay well. Number two, they've got an insatiable demand. I mean, for as long as electricity has to keep running, they have to keep on consuming coal. So there's quite a good space to be in right now. So Eskom will now support you from exploration stage, which has never happened before. They will assist with project funding. They will even assist with equity funding. And recall that in most instances, what Eskom also will do for you is that once they have tested your coal and they are satisfied it meets their specifications, they will give you a contract upfront. So even before you start the development of your mine, you have an offtake agreement. Now, if you can raise funding with an offtake agreement, then you shouldn't be in the business. We have found that there is, to a large extent, export price parity with our sales into the local metallurgical industry and other sectors, including the brick manufacturers and all sorts of other sectors, the smelters and so on. And so we have not been particularly worried about rushing into the export market, because there is a significant local market here, and since the price is basically the same to a large extent. What we have seen is some interest from the majors to offload. Of course, this will have to happen in cooperation with Eskom. So some of the discussions have started around this. because those transactions for the likes of us, who are small players, will be very transformative. We're really looking forward to seeing that process unfold in the next few years.